I've been writing poetry for as long as I could read, which I think was maybe 4 or 5 years old. I loved Dr. Seuss books. I think that maybe it was there, or maybe those books trained my ears and my mind to think in that way. But I've always been able to hear a sort of sing-song verse in my head and translate that into words, mostly in a sort of iambic pentameter. So I started out writing rhyming poems and stories and limericks and songs and all those kinds of things. But even in my fiction, I tend to write at a pace of sentences and things that flow and sound a little bit more like poetry than prose at times. And so I started wondering if some people are just drawn to rhythmic verse and prefer poetry that is rhyming, or if some people just prefer poetry that doesn't necessarily rhyme. The other day I wrote a poem, and I wrote it first as a non-rhyming bit of prose. And then I decided to rewrite it in a little bit longer format with sentences that rhyme. And I want to read them both to you and see what you think. So feel free to comment below, but be nice, because it's never easy to birth your babies into this world. And like I said, this is one that I just kind of wrote pretty quickly the other day, and so here it is. Wind moves branches, tiny leaves clinging, stretched and fluttering, the air tickles, bringing music. An orchestra of asynchronous chatter, changing notes on shifting currents. Wind slows through green curtains, heavy and warm, hanging motionless, conserving energy. A canopy of shade, refuge for a nest, playground for a squirrel, a book-reading haven. Wind picks up through riots of color, red and yellow costumes on a sunset tour. Falling tapestries invite the darkness. Fading browns crackle, a cacophony of letting go. Wind whistles through branches stripped bare, a landscape filled with skeletons, truth and beauty married in contrast, reminders of the inevitable. A necessary portal, a cosmic symphony, a player on the stage, always on the wind. Now here's the same thoughts written into verse with rhyming and some rhythm. Wind moves branches whose leaves are holding on. Stretched and fluttering, the air tickles into song. An orchestra of instruments in asynchronous clatter, changing notes on shifting currents, growing, getting fatter. Wind slows through branches, green and heavy in the heat, hanging without waving to the friends that they might meet. A canopy of refuge, a playground for a squirrel, a place for reading stories with adventures that unfurl. Wind picks up through changing leaves, for time there is no cure. Red and yellow costumes on a final sunset tour. The falling tapestry, a grand finale for the show. Fading browns crackle in a burst of letting go. Wind whistles easily through branches now stripped bare, a skeleton reminder of the truth and beauty there. Leaves go into earth, a final act with little sound. For now, much needed rest as they nestle underground. A necessary portal, a cosmic symphony of birth and life and death as sure as you and I are we.